All right, folks, I'm headed home from the office. It's a long day. It's after 7 o'clock. Feel like I'm gonna be having a few long days over the next little while. Going to Reddit for this topic. I think it's an interesting one. 10 years of experience at a dream job with quotes around it, and but concerned about growth. So they say they have minimal supervision. Their job is to build prototypes and write up reports on how new tech could be used to positively drive company growth. How do I continue to grow as an engineer while in this job? I feel like I've peaked. So the reason I like this, I'm going to keep reading though, but I like it because I spent a ton of my career doing prototyping. So I was like, this one sticks out to me. They say I really have a few choices: management, stay at this level, work at a bigger firm with people higher up slash more experienced than me. So they're saying that's feeling like it's getting hard to find. Switch fields within tech, switch careers entirely, start a business consultancy, just work on side projects and have fun. So they said I love to code. I got into this 10 years ago because of that. With the proliferation of AI tools, though, and where it's headed, the average coding job isn't that much fun anymore. I don't know if this post will attract hate or not, but looking for other people's opinions. So you're gonna get my opinion. So I think it's cool. I think it's a cool topic. Excited to talk about this. It says 30 minutes to get home, which means hopefully I've beat all of the traffic finally. And then I'm driving to the office in the morning. Be back here tomorrow. So, friendly reminder, if you want your questions answered, leave them in the comments. Happy to go through that. I've been trying to get to all of them. If you have questions that my God, this thing has got to stop. If you have questions that are a little bit more involved and or you want to be kept anonymous, look for Dev Leader on social media. That's my main channel on YouTube. It's also my sort of personal brand that I use for all of social media. Send me a message. Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn if you want. My profile should be open for messages if you want to send me one. And yeah, with that said, let's kind of chat through this. So it's kind of interesting. I guess it sounds like, and I kind of try to channel what this person's perspective is. It sounds like they're saying they've peaked, but I don't really know when I hear them talk about their situation. Like, I don't really get why they feel they've peaked necessarily, so it's kind of hard to address this with specifics. But it sounds like, I don't know, like maybe losing a little bit of interest. Like it seems like it's kind of just almost like on repeat, which is kind of interesting to me because, and maybe when you think about prototyping, like this should be, if anything, should be the most interesting thing, right? This is usually where you get to work with new technology, try things out. This is a space that a lot of people are very interested, or it seems shiny, right? It's like it's cool because it's new technology and you get to try things out. By the way, it's not for everyone because prototyping, you throw a lot of stuff away. So, yeah, kind of interested in, I would love to understand further, like what it is they feel like they're looking for, because I think that's kind of what's missing here. I get that they're saying with AI and the direction they see the industry going, they're like, it seems like they kind of phrased it like taking some of the fun out of it. So maybe when it comes to problem solving and digging into things, they're saying, like, I don't know, AI kind of does a bunch of that for us now. I'm kind of putting words into their mouth, just trying to navigate what they're saying here. But maybe that's the case for them, right? Like the way that things are going, it's no longer appealing. So that's part of it. Might want to touch on that depending on, they listed a few options, right? I'm obviously not going to know the perfect thing for them. That's for them to decide. They mentioned management, right? I would say, like, just to kind of call this one out right out from the beginning, I would say, like, management should not be a thing that's like, I don't know, just because it's an option. I would say, like, don't just go into it because it's available. I would say go into it if you find that leading people and like focusing on working with people is where you want to be. Because if you think that AI is taking away from your interest in coding and you really like to code and then you want to talk about management, I think that this would be devastating for someone that really wants to focus on code, because you will have less and less time to be coding. This truck is going to want to get in front of me because the guy in front of me was going too slow. Excellent. But yeah, I don't think, I know it's listed there that he said management, but unless in his career he's been like, hey, I've been working on projects and leading small teams, and I really enjoy like helping people grow, leading them. If that's the thing that stands out, then like, hell yeah, management is a great fit for that. But what I'm hearing in the message is like, it's, AI and how things are going is taking away from the joy of writing code. In my personal experience, I love to write code, but management for me is like my full-time job, right? I've been doing this for 12 plus years now, but I write code every single day outside of work because I love to do it. So I'm able to balance those things out. Like that's the thing that works for me personally. I really enjoy being able to help people. I like spending time helping people grow in their careers, helping them be successful. So that's great, but I didn't have to give up coding altogether because I do it outside of work. Now, I'm a total nerd in that regard, and you might not be, and that's fine. But in this case, for this individual, I would say you might want to be careful going into management unless you can find management roles which exist where you're going to be coding alongside the team. Generally, I would say either smaller companies or smaller teams. It's more common. You'll hear in startups like you have to wear many hats. One of those hats as a manager is often programming at the same time. But at a certain scale for team sizes, it's not really feasible. I've talked about this many times to be coding alongside your team. It probably means that you're not managing on the people side as effectively as you could. But that's management. So let's park that one. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on it from the beginning. I think something that they called out that's interesting is like, being able to surround yourself with, potentially at a bigger company with smarter people, kind of like they might feel like they're becoming like a bigger fish in the pond where they're at. And, perhaps relocating to a larger company, or maybe not even necessarily larger, but different, because larger doesn't necessarily solve that. Arguably it does statistically, but going to a different company and having a different environment surrounding you, different people, right? That might mean that you're around people that you perceive as being, more accomplished than you, better than you, and you can learn from them, right? Maybe, like I said, this person feels like where they're at, they're the person that everyone's looking up to. And that's that's a huge accomplishment to be able to kind of grow in a space where people are doing that. Where I used to work, I feel like I was reaching that point where I'm not saying that people looked up to me because it was like, oh my God, you're the best programmer. But I think a lot of people were like, hey, you've been here for so long, you can help us with these different things. And like, you seem to know these things. So like, that was a cool experience for me. But, at the same time, like, I can kind of relate to this person that the company, and they did after I left, they'd have to scale like significantly more for me to be surrounded by more people that I'm like, hey, I can really look up to this person in terms of what they've accomplished and learn from them. So like, I can understand that, but that's a decision like that person's going to have to make if that's truly the thing that drives them, right? Like, do I need to surround myself with other people to level up? Sorry, that person was gatekeeping the fast lane. They were going slow enough in the lane beside the fast lane that I couldn't like get up to speed. But we did it. So just to kind of circle back to this list of points, or like these opportunities that this person listed out, the main takeaway that I want anyone to have from watching this video is like, at the end of the day, like, you need to be the person that decides on your path forward, right? I think this is a cop. I can't tell though. And I'm in the fast lane, so I'd like to go fast, but like, I think it's a cop. But it also just might be a Toyota. We'll creep up a little bit more. It's not a cop. Okay. Yeah, at the end of the day, like, you need to decide what motivates you in your career growth. So I can understand if you want to turn to Reddit, you know, get some perspective. The same thing happens, like, I'm answering questions from people that leave comments or message me, and I just look at it like offering perspective. But so I'm not like crapping on this person for asking Reddit. I'm just saying that, like, at the end of the day, this person needs to be the one to make a decision. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the obvious path is do whatever. I don't know what their motivations are. Like I said, if they want to lead people, like, that's a great opportunity. Move into management. If you're like, I want to surround myself with smarter people than me, like, maybe you need a different change of environment. It could also be, there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on with this. They said, like, maybe I just stay where I'm at, like, keep doing what I'm doing. But they also mentioned at the end of their list, like, you know, do some side projects. That might be a very interesting thing to consider. The other one was consult. You might be able to combine all of these, right? Depending on what your work allows and your work-life balance that you'd like to have. If you're very comfortable at work, that doesn't mean that work is the only thing, depending on where you're working, the only thing that you can be doing that's like, number one, your place to grow skills, and number two, a place to earn money. So if we make the assumption this person stays in their role, one option is that they're like, hey, I'm not getting a lot of opportunity to focus on some of the coding that I would like to do. Yeah, like, why not go work on some side projects? It sounds like this person really likes to code, which is great. Like, go do some more of that. Right? If you don't have time outside of work, that's where I think it gets tricky, because if your needs are not being met with respect to the code you're writing, but you also don't have capacity for more of that outside of work, I think that that's like changing domains, changing teams, right? Like, you need to use your work time to get that fulfilled. And that's how I would look at that, I think. I don't have time outside of work because you don't want to disrupt the work-life balance you have. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm also not having my needs met with respect to technical growth or coding focus, whatever it is. I think then you need to start to change your environment, your team, the domain that you're working in, and kind of pick between those things, or a variety of them, to be able to have that sense of fulfillment in your career. Sometimes when people do this kind of exercise, like, it can be a little scary, because they're like, well, does that mean I take a step back in terms of compensation? This is already pretty comfortable. Does that mean something else is, you know, by definition, like, going to be more uncomfortable because it's more unknown? The answer is like, yeah, maybe. But you need to make a decision about, like, are you just fine being complacent? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I know for myself, that's like one of my fears, is just becoming too complacent. So it would be hard for me to make an adjustment, but if I realize, like, oh shit, like, I really am just being totally complacent where I'm at, I would probably need to find ways to kick myself into gear. So let's assume they're not changing roles. I kind of touched on the side project stuff because, like, for me, that's kind of what's going on, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm complacent to my role, but I'm saying I love to code, and I am in a career path that does not really afford a lot of time to code. It's not an expectation of my role. But because I love to do it, I make time for that outside of work. Cool. That works for me, may not work for you, totally fine. The other direction that this person could go, because they listed consulting or starting a business, is like, that doesn't necessarily have to be, depending where you work, doesn't have to be something where you're like, I need to leave my job and do this. You might be able to do some type of work on the side. So maybe you can consult doing particular types of things on the side. Or maybe truly it is something where you're like, I just want to leave my job and pursue this kind of thing full time. Or part-time, depending on your finances. Like, we don't know this person's finances. I don't know your finances if you're watching this video. But maybe you're in a position where you're like, I can just walk away from work and consult and start that up, and I'm comfortable getting business. But I think that these become really focused around work-life balance. Personally, that's how I look at that. And again, like, speaking from experience, I know where I'm comfortable at with my work-life balance, which is basically work and a little bit of life. And truthfully, and I'm not saying this like sarcastically or facetiously, like, I'm very lucky to have my wife because, for many reasons. But one of the things that she's very good at, even though she might think I'm getting annoyed by her at sometimes, is like, she's very good at making me realize like there's more things outside of work. So my compass that I have for work-life balance is clearly pretty busted, but she's very good at kind of reminding me of like of the other things that are important in life. So I think if it weren't for her, or if I was married to someone else and I didn't have like a partner that was reminding me of these things, I don't think that I have like a healthy work-life balance, like, set point, if you will. So it's good to have her for that. I think I really value that. But I don't know this person's situation. I don't know yours either, right? I know that for the work that I take on, like, I work my 9-to-5 job, and there's situations like the past few weeks kind of thing where I might be going into the office more, starting earlier, ending later. But like, I get it. I worked at a startup for 8 years and worked nonstop. Like, I don't have a problem with having to do that periodically. I don't think I can sustain it like around the clock anymore, but I get it. But if I wasn't doing that with work, like, I do this with content creation. I do this with course creation. I do this, like, I build Brand Ghost outside of work, right? Like, I am creating a social media content scheduling platform. Like, I use it for my own stuff, but I work on these things outside of work because I love to build and I love to create things. So again, going back to this person's situation, like, they really need to answer for themselves, like, what they want. Like, what do you actually want out of this? Maybe the reason they ask this is they're looking for other ideas. And that's totally cool, right? Like, different perspective, maybe ideas they hadn't considered. But one of the things they talk about specifically is growing as an engineer. So I know in this discussion so far, I talked about the management path. Okay, growing as a manager is not necessarily growing as an engineer specifically. It's a different career path. It doesn't mean you neglect engineering, but it's a different career path. Then I've been talking about work-life balance with, like, are you doing side projects just for fun? Are you gonna go consult and do a business? Maybe that's on the side on top of work. But the focus has been work-life balance. They're saying, I want to grow as an engineer. So in my mind, that suggests that, like, they're not necessarily totally interested in taking their foot off the gas in terms of like, I don't know, like being more surrounded by engineering things. And it also sounds like the way that they're describing their role is it's like kind of comfy. So again, it makes me think that they might be kind of hungry for something more, like something different, something more. But growing as an engineer can mean so many things. It doesn't just mean working more, but like, again, I don't know where this person has weaknesses or opportunities to lean into their strengths. And I wanted to take the last bit of this conversation to talk about one of the comments I saw that it might be the highest upvoted one, but I think that this is a great one because this actually reflects some experience that I have that I think worked very, very well. And given that I don't do prototyping work anymore and like kind of change my career path in this regard, this is something that I would also recommend to people that are doing a lot of prototyping work and want to grow. So one of the limiting factors when doing prototyping work generally is if you're constantly going to be on the team that's rapidly prototyping things, trying things out, yes, you get exposed to cool new things. Unfortunately, you have to can and throw out most of what you're building because it's just experiments to answer questions at the end of the day. And if you answer the question and that means that you're not moving forward with some technology, great, like whatever you built is getting thrown out. It's not that it's wasted because you answered questions with it, but you don't use the technology anymore. You move on. Maybe you pick it up later, who knows? But this creates a situation where you're doing a very particular type of work. And generally, what you're not doing is building and maintaining systems. It ends up being a lot more purpose-built stuff. And sometimes, you know, a lot of people don't like to think about the maintenance work and the legacy systems and the tech debt. They're like, all that stuff, I hate it. But there's a lot of engineering that goes into that because you have tons of interesting constraints. Super brief example, we were talking today, the developers for Brand Ghost were messaging me, we were discussing kind of a feature that we've been talking about building. And I was sitting there going like, I agree that we should go build this or try to, but I'm like, man, this would be so easy or so much more easy to go build if we didn't have a lot of the in-place infrastructure, a lot of the pre-built assumptions that we have. Like there's going to be so much work for me to make this happen with our live data that already exists. So it's like disproportionately more like tech debt or like migration work than just like new feature building. But this is a type of thing that happens in real software engineering. Like how do we navigate these things? So what this person in the comments had recommended, that was a really good tangent, wasn't it? Was that they said, why don't you go prototype something? And for the teams that are actually going to take the prototype work and go integrate it into the product, why don't you go like do that with them and kind of be the consultant or however you want to shape the role, like go do that and integrate with them, because this is such a good opportunity to get back into the other stuff that we're doing as software engineers. It's not pure prototyping. Then once that's steady state and working, maybe go back to prototyping. So before I left Magnet Forensics, this was actually like one of the thoughts that we were trying to form up, and I don't know how they operate now. I know people that still work there very closely, but I don't talk to them about like the operations of work. And if I were to, I would expect that they aren't keen to disclose because that's their personal business. But one of the things we talked about doing was this idea of like, once it's ready, and like say you're not throwing out a prototype, but you're like, we want to go forward with this. Like, how does it look to go hand that work over to the team? Because if you're just kind of like throwing it over to them and saying, hey, you go figure it out now, like there's a really big missed opportunity there. And historically, we had some interesting experiences where like, just to give you a brief example, like we were building digital forensics tools, and I ran a prototyping team. And when we would prototype things, like we built a bunch of stuff out, and then we had to go find effective ways to go ramp up the other team that was going to go take that over. And sometimes we didn't do it effectively. Other times we did. One of my last examples was actually something that I was purely building as a prototype, not even from like the team. Like I just took this project on as a solo developer, even though I was developing and managing for other teams. Anyway, built this thing, and then we said, the CTO was like, awesome, cool, like, how do we ship it? And it's like, well, we actually have to integrate it into the product. Like, what do you want this to look like? So in this case, I sort of volunteered, like, I will go work with the team to do the integration. And kind of an interesting experience, because I think we had planned for this, but what ended up happening was, like, I presented it to them, showed them the code. They had a couple of the more senior people walk through it. And not that I'm going to toot my own horn here, but at the time, one of the senior engineers was like, yeah, like, we can just take this and this will integrate fine. Like, we actually don't need you to, like, do the integration, or we don't have to rewrite it. Like, this will just work. And I think I got very lucky, because what they were integrating it to, I had already spent years building, because I was one of the developers on it before. So the point is that there's these interesting opportunities to go back to the teams that are going to integrate, and sort of, you'd have to figure out how this works from like a team dynamic, but like, become part of that team, be the consultant, be the tech lead for it, partner with the tech lead that's on it, however that needs to look. And yeah, I think, like, personally, that would be what I recommend. You can get some really cool visibility. You can demonstrate more impact that way, right? It's not, hey, here's just this cool prototype we built, and then when it comes time to talk about impact, you're like, actually, nothing that I work on has a clear impact for the business, because I'm not part of landing any of it. You feel very disconnected in that regard. I'm not saying there's zero impact. I'm saying it feels that way. So instead, you're able to kind of speak more clearly to the impact you're having with the business. Work on some other engineering angles that pure prototyping doesn't give you. So I like that. Again, I don't know the person and what they're after, but like, if I were in that situation as a developer, I think that's what I would do, because I was kind of in that situation, but I wanted to take the management route. That's my story, right? Is like, I was managing and developing at the same time, and truly at the end of the day, I wanted to spend more of my time managing. So yeah, I think that's the recommendation I would have. But if they wanted my opinion for what I would do in that situation for myself. But ultimately, like I said, we all have to answer these types of questions for how we would like to grow. So that's why I said the takeaway that I want you to have from this video is, when you ask questions like this, I hope that it's to collect data points and perspectives, and not that you're just having people try to vote on the path that you take forward. Because, you might hear a perspective and it's not the popular vote, but you're like, that actually aligns with what I would like to do. So think about how you'd like your career to progress. Think about your work-life balance. It's very interesting that as I talk through this, I'm actually going to be wrapping up a course that talks about some of these things in terms of how you navigate it. It's not the core part of the course, but at least core part of the things I'm responsible for in the course. But I do think that you need to think about what you want out of your career, and what you want out of, like, sort of your life outside of your career. How do you plan to balance those things? This person probably thinks I'm crazy blocking the road, but I gotta back into my driveway. So yeah, I think that's it, folks. I'm just pulling in. If you have questions you want answered, ask them in the comments. Otherwise, find Dev Leader on social media, and I'm happy to answer your questions if you send me a message. Until next time, take care.